property values and the rural character that brought our families and businesses here to Tremont in the first place. An inland port brings heavy truck traffic, industrial noise, diesel emissions, and long-term land use consequences that are fundamentally incompatible with this community. Equally concerning is how this process is being handled. As residents, we've been told repeatedly that no single entity is really in charge. The city says that they're not driving the project and that they're trying to protect the area. The county says that they're not leading it. State entities, including the Inland Port Authority, say that they're just providing support and finding assistance. Developers say that they're responding to opportunities created by others. Yet, despite all of this, the project keeps moving forward. This raises a very basic and reasonable question: who is actually accountable for this project? Right now, responsibility is so fragmented that no one appears willing to own the full scope of impacts, decisions, and long-term consequences. That lack of clarity erodes public trust. Plans should not feel like a shrubbery where authority disappears every time the hand is raised. They're asking for greater transparency, specifically clear identification of who is driving this project and who has the final decision-making authority, full disclosure of agreements, memoranda, or commitments already made, honest acknowledgement of long-term impacts, not just projected economic benefits, and a process that gives local residents a real voice before irreversible decisions are made. Economic development is not inherently bad, but badly sited development pushed forward without accountability or community buy-in is bad planning. This commission has a duty to protect the public interest, not just today, but decades in the future. We ask you to slow this process down, demand clarity, and insist that those promoting this project step forward and take responsibility for it. Our community deserves transparency, accountability, and respect, and most of all, we deserve to be heard when we say this, is that this is not the right project, not the right place in my backyard.
Thank you. Public comments are still open. For those just showing up, yeah, it's just the public comment section of the meeting. You're welcome to make a comment.
Jamie Poppleton, Tremont, Utah. I just have a question. I guess it's not a question, but something that I would just ask. When it comes to the agenda, a lot of people have reached out and didn't know what the initials were for UI Port Authority. So if there's going to be something on the agenda, can we ask, or me personally as residents, to spell that out so people know what's going on and what it is versus just initials or acronyms or vague information? It's just a thought. I just had several people reach out and ask me what that was and what it meant. So just a suggestion, if you wouldn't mind, for future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, point 5, new business. Point A, discussion and consideration of preliminary plat, Cloverfield Estates Phase 3.
Of course.
This looks a lot like the copy I definitely forgot to send you guys.
Let me try.
This looks
Blank?
looks like micro. No, just that I forgot to send it overall, and I apologize for that. Introduction, while Tiff pulls this up,
Okay.
is this is over along 110 South next to about 900 West. This property owner came in for a rezone, and as they were going through the development, they were looking to use the single family transition overlay zone that is in chapter 1.16. And so this has gone through the DRC and has met all of the requirements. So as it comes to the planning commission as an administrative decision for you guys, to just review it, ask questions and approve it if you're comfortable.
You said that's not by Maverick, right?
Yeah, just southeast of Maverick. It's behind, kind of behind Ron Keller Tires existing site. There it is. So it's that parcel right there with ADM.
So how big will the lots be?
There has to be a proportion between, but most 4,000 to 5,000 square feet.
What zone did we zone this again?
It's zoned R110, and that's one of the eligible base zones that the overlay zone can be added onto.
So they're doing it as just an overlay or is it PUD?
Overlay. So the parcel itself was too small for the PUD.
That's what I was thinking. And the parcel to the south, he's not joining or he is?
They tried to have some conversations, but they didn't come to an agreement. So the property owner to the south wasn't sure he wanted this size of units on his house. And anyway, so due to the difference in their timing, they just couldn't come to an agreement on it. So cul-de-sacs it is. Which will be a first in the south half of Tremont to have some cul-de-sacs.
A couple. Seems a little squishy. All right, here.
What are those going out from the cul-de-sac? What are those?
Those are private lanes to get to the
back house?
the back two homes. For 2 homes per, well, one has 3, the north one has 3 lots to it, and the south one has 2.
Could you put the map back up for a second? We have other properties in town that are that small lots.
Visionaries development over by the old hospital is that small.
Okay.
Could we ask to hear from the property owner that didn't come to the conclusion with the developer, or? Give him-
I can see if he wants to come over really fast, but I didn't ask him to come here.
Well, I don't mean come here, but like, could we wait and, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would just like to consider what he's thinking. If he can't reach some sort of agreement and it's a timing issue, could they reach an agreement? I don't know.
I visited with him and I mean, I think he's open to doing something. I think doing what they're proposing, stubbing the road to him is fantastic, just so we can keep the continuity of those roads moving forward. So that was,
So it seems legit.
yeah, well, I talked with him and I think ultimately someday they may want to do something,
Yeah.
but ultimately stubbing the road, I think is a smart idea, just so that both of them aren't dead ends, and ultimately if somebody decides to develop that, they have the ability to connect the roads and keep it connecting.
Yeah, there was connecting them through a private alley created a greater flexibility for how they connected. Doing it with the 60-foot right of way that this to meet city standards really only forced one solution to make all of that tie in, and neither property owner was enthusiastic about what that roadway connection. So I think, to Micah's point, I think having the private alley connect them will help. I know there's going to have to be some connectivity with the I think if I can recall right, there has to be some connectivity with the storm drain, but it depends on what the grading looks like for the north part if they want to try and get it all the way to the east.
You're saying this is a private road, not a public street?
The alley would be private.
What alley?
The
Go back.
view back.
The north or south
Yeah,
directions.
yeah, that'd be an alley.
Oh,
They were trying to figure out how to get a road to connect, but how it had to S-curve around the south house.
I don't like that at all.
You were
Myself.
thinking it connected.
Yeah, the
road,
vision,
right?
original vision when I talked to him was that we would actually, bend the road because that is not gonna allow either side to connect. Because it's private, they're just doing those to get an extra lot.
Yeah, they're, the road and the access to that, I don't know where the negotiations ended, but this property owner ended up, instead of waiting and continuing those on, said, just wanted to go forward with this plan, and it meets the zoning code, it meets the standards for the public works. And so this is the one where we're at.
How big are those units?
Like the homes,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my guess is they'll probably be 18, I mean, you could get probably as small as 1,700 square feet, but I'm guessing all 2-story.
It's so hard because all the property around them are bigger properties, so it's hard to like compare it because you're like, oh, well, that like it's the same size as the shed, but when you just
I think, no, that'd just be the lot thing. I don't think you put the size of the building envelopes on there.
So the property to the south on the map, there's already a street going to it, but that could have been a future cul-de-sac there.
Yeah, the struggle with, because with the north lot, the house is tucked into the corner, and where this one, the house is almost right where the road would have needed to go through. So trying to get it to bend around and then come back around, and so that it didn't create a cul-de-sac with a T intersection. The layout, and we looked at a couple, it felt like, and I never got them in a room together to talk to the north property owner and the south property owner. It felt like neither of them were happy with the impact of having that road go through and what lots were there left to be built. And honestly, the south property owner isn't very sure still what they want to do with the property, and because anyway, the north property owner got a little tired of waiting, so he moved on.
Is that like pasture, like not pasture, but I think like a corral on the east side?
Yes, the homeowner was
property.
enthusiastic
Okay.
about horses, and I think he had 7 or 8 of them in that corral before he.
It's a past mini riding arena from many years ago. And then an individual moved in, kept the animal rights and had horses and cattle back in. And it's just recently moved.
But where we stubbed the road to the south, right, that road was eventually gonna go through. Can we not make him connect those roads per the code?
We can ask him about it. It's because he still meets the public standards with the cul-de-sac and the turnarounds. This works and he's okay with it, so there isn't a lot of power to force him to come over and say, hey, you have to stub the road through.
Well, I've been on the other side and they've made me. But, I mean, otherwise, because everybody would not want it to go through, but that's the whole reason why we stub the roads, because that's why the road kind of stubs on both sides. I mean, in my mind, if you're going to develop it, I don't care about the one to the north, because I don't think we need to stub it to Main Street. I don't think that's a big deal.
No, access management with UDOT probably wouldn't even allow it.
Exactly. I think the north one is fine. It's mostly the south one. Because that road's stubbed, it just seems dumb to not allow it. Or I guess if the city's okay with it being private and he will give an easement to connect those roads through, then maybe it's a conversation. In my mind, you know what I mean? Because if it's private and they won't allow access, then we should have a more conversation as far as making it a real road to make it continue. I'm surprised the road department doesn't want to have it go through just for the snow pushing alone.
So years ago, and I don't know where we would find this, but the city was gonna put that through there, and I don't know if it was the current individual that owns the property to the south of what we're talking about, or one prior to him, but they actually came here. Somewhere we have minute notes of them asking to have, to buy that to stub the street, and that's why you see the 2 laterals there given to the other 2 property owners on that to limit that out. So, yeah, the initial design of this was to go straight up through the existing property that we're talking about and rolling around to the top of the street up above that. But then that all got, and so I don't know where we would find the actual notes on that, but they did come before the city council and the planning commission to
Yeah.
do what he did on that for the bill.
But I guess technically, it's an R110 zone, so he's asking us to shrink the lots in half essentially.
Mhm.
And, I mean, in my mind, I'm kind of inclined to say, if you're not connecting it, then keep it at R110 if you want to do it that way. I mean, if it's less homes and there's less connections, I don't know. I just think it would be way better for everybody for it to go through for all of the reasons we talked about on a lot of these other ones. Just
How big would the pass-through be?
the private road, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, the private road, you could get down to, I think it's 25 feet, is our minimum for two-way. And, but if you're gonna do a public right of way, then, our smallest is 60.
Is there a reason they're doing homes here instead of like townhouses?
To do townhomes, they'd have to come in and do a rezone to get down to one of the RM densities.
That makes sense.
And because the lot is too small for the PUD, this was the only overlay they could enact for getting smaller lots.
Okay, I found some code. The city, Tremont, may require streets and stub streets in locations, sizes, and designs necessary to provide adequate traffic circulation and access both within the subdivision and to adjacent parcels, including future connections to adjacent properties and streets identified on the city's master road plan.
That's kind of what I was alluding to, is that they come in here to talk about what the.
Are they not here?
Master road plan had been.
They are. I believe I think he's out of town. Anyway, but I said I discussed this with the planning commission.
But it can't go straight, right? That's what
No,
you're saying.
we looked at trying to get it to stub to because I thought we could try to get it to line up with the access there next to on the south side of the credit union. But where that existing home is there, and I mean, both of those are homes that we didn't think we'd be able to get the right of way to squeeze it in between. Unless someone came in and, demoed that property completely and started over.
What's north?
Ron,
There's Maverick right
So
here.
is that a right of way between 0005?
no, that's another parcel.
What's there?
Trees by the look of it.
I know, like, is there a house there? Like, is
There is up further, there's a commercial building up, yeah, see right there. So
Okay.
there's no way that road's going through it anytime soon.
No, the really only connection is the stub to the south and tying it into the other property.
Or maybe stubbing through Brad Archibald's
Yeah,
property
yeah,
next to
that's what
that.
would be your other thing, is going through Brad's property to cut over to 1,000.
Yeah, but I think that feels forced in my mind. We're gonna have to go around that fuel center thing that they framed in. I think going to the south is a natural thing. And they've designed it already that it will work.
Did the homeowner put that house in after the streets were laid out?
Oh, yeah.
So, and we allowed him to put it that close to
I
the
know, it's
future
insane.
road?
Well, I mean, technically he owns the road stub.
Oh.
Which house are you referring to?
0089.
Yeah. So that's what I say, whether it was the actual home builder or before him, but they look interested in buying that parcel of property. With the city having a master plan format of that area to cut through and turn. And that's why I say, they came before the planning commission and the city council. I don't know where we're gonna find that. And we literally approved him to do that before he built the house there. And then as a result of that, that's where you see the stubs down below going to the two property owners on their sides. And I'd have to double check that because he actually might, doesn't he own those two too? The actual street.
Oh, yeah, both. Well, and even the property owner to the north owns the 0054 part of the road.
It gets a little weird in there.
I guess
So
my,
will the city have, sorry, excuse me,
no, go for it.
will the city have snow removal obligation on that cul-de-sac if that's a private road?
Yeah, so on the cul-de-sac, yes, but not on the alleys.
Yeah, not the private road.
I guess my biggest concern going forward would be that if we have the circle there, right, the cul-de-sac, what is going to happen with that property on 0089? I mean, obviously, it's his property, right? But there's a lot of space there that if you ever wanted to sell it and develop it, there's not really an option for them to split that into smaller lots or anything because there's no access there.
I mean, they'd have the access to the road, so by fire code, if they could find a way to fit 30 units on there, they could get it to work. But you'd end up with just you'd end up with a cul-de-sac, but instead of going up and dead ending like this one, you'd have to start curving over so you can get the frontages on the west side on the east side of the property.
Is there
Instead of being
enough room for
centered
that?
like this one. What?
There's enough room for that. They could do it that way.
Or if he doesn't want the density that the north property owner is going for, then you could even just look at doing some like temporary turn, like a couple flag lots, which would, so flag lots is where you've got a stem. I think our code says it has to be at least 20 feet wide. So your driveway, you put the house further back and then you have a long driveway to get up to the road. So that's what they would end up looking at. So, yeah, I mean, the what caused this discussion, if you go all the way back, is the fact that that house got put really where the road should have been planned to go through. If you would have moved it and just turned it a smidgen, like this
It
becomes
seems intentional, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
If I was
well-
choosing to build a house on this lot and there was a road there and I put it right in the middle, like,
And again,
I
that's
think
why
that
I
was
brought up what
probably
I brought up
for a
when they came
reason.
before. That was kind of the initial plan to put the road there.
Yeah.
There was some backs and forths that took place on that because of, how they wanted the driveway to look. And anyway, this was ultimately what they ended up with.
Well, in my conversation with that property owner, the development of that parcel was, in his mind, imminent at some point, even just going around the house, they had it already designed and everything. So in my mind, it's a critical component. I mean, if he's saying, hey, I'm never gonna develop it and I don't care about that stuff, I mean, essentially, he could sell it to somebody, they could change, and then we end up with two dead-end cul-de-sacs, which in my mind are a nightmare. I have two right behind me, and the city couldn't push them last winter. I ended up having to push them, but I just think it going through is gonna be so much easier. So for me, I think we ought to just table it, bring both property owners in and have the discussion. If property owner to the south really has any intention to develop in the near future, we should have that conversation and see if something can be worked out, or if not, if it can at least be stubbed to keep the continuity going, would be ideal. If the property owner to the south isn't gonna develop it, then it's probably a moot point, we just do whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
I also agree.
I make a motion to table it.
It's been moved by Micah that we table point A or 5A. Is there a second?
I second that.
And it's been seconded. All those in favor of tabling 5A, discussion and consideration preliminary plat Cloverfield Estates, phase 3?
Yes.
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 Yes, that's right. All opposed? Say no. Okay. And motion passes to table that discussion until we get in here, property owners in here. 5B, Utah. What am I trying to say? The IPA. See, now I'm in agreement. We might have to write down all of the acronyms because I'm acronym out. Inland Port Authority Training.
I'm gonna move over so Stephanie has the mic.
Jeff, does this count towards our hour of training?
It's 1 of 4.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Stephanie Packman with the Utah Inland Port Authority. I have come and spoken to the Planning Commission before, but I would like to know how many of you were not a part of that training? How many of you have haven't had this information yet? I think, oh, okay, great. Well, we have a couple of new folks. I'm here to answer any questions. I'm just gonna start with the Utah Inland Port Authority 101, go through what we're doing here in Box Elder County, and hopefully I'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So the Utah Inland Port Authority, we were created in 2018 by the Utah State Legislature. We were originally created to facilitate the creation of a traditional inland port in Salt Lake City. And through the years, the focus of the inland port and the tools that the legislature has given us has shifted, and we're more focused on economic development efforts across the state. If you go to the next slide, we create project areas across the state. I'll highlight a couple of those in a future slide, but wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of what it is to be in a project area. We receive requests from the local legislative body. In the case of Tremonton, the Tremonton City Council passed a resolution inviting the Utah Inland Port Authority to create a project area. It's similar to an RDA or a CRA, where we essentially create a tax boundary in specific areas of the community and leverage tax increment financing to finance infrastructure projects. The code that we have is structured in such a way that, you know, this is definitely a community first type of development project. So we take cues from the city on how things need to be going. I'll talk a little bit about the tools that we have versus the tools that we do not have, the authorities that we do not have by participating with the city in these projects. The difference between the Utah Inland Port Authority project area and a traditional CRA is we do not require a interlocal agreement with all of the taxing entities to create this tax project area. And so that's really the biggest difference, and it's an important difference between the two mechanisms, but they function very similarly, where the taxing entities are deferring those revenues for a time, and we use those revenues to pay for infrastructure development. Go ahead to the next slide. One more. Here are project areas across the state. The one we're talking about today is the Golden Spike project area. I manage 4 project areas in northern Utah. My counterparts manage project areas regionally. And if you go to the next slide, we have a number of resolutions for communities that are interested in creating these project areas. They make a lot of sense for these communities that have large areas that are zoned for development. A lot of these areas don't have infrastructure to develop, and this mechanism allows the community to defer revenues to pay for that infrastructure upfront and ensure that we can right-size that infrastructure for the growth that's going to be coming. Go ahead to the next slide. As I mentioned, here's how we've broken it out regionally. I just work with the northern Utah communities. Go ahead and move to the next slide. We work really closely with these communities on project area creation and economic development efforts. The great thing about working on economic development in the front end is once these properties have come in, once these companies have come in, we can then optimize the logistical network on the back end. We work really closely with these communities to enhance the logistical network, be that rail infrastructure, roads, airports, We're working really closely to ensure that we're utilizing the assets that we currently have and enhancing them in a way that makes sense for our growth. A good example is our investments in rail infrastructure. We have great rail infrastructure here in Utah that's underutilized, and every rail car can take 4 trucks off the road. So that's a significant impact on Utah's roads, on our traffic to get those trucks off of the road. And so investments in rail really do make a difference, especially to mitigate some of the challenges that truck traffic has on Utah roadways. The biggest tool that we bring to the table is our public financing tools. That's really how communities are leveraging the port project areas to help finance these generational infrastructure projects that are going to enhance growth in these communities. Go ahead to the next slide. Tools we don't have. We don't have land use authority within our project areas. We don't do any permitting, zoning. We don't have the ability to move this tax increment outside of the project into other project areas or outside of your community. The revenues that are generated here stay here. Go ahead to the next slide. With all of our project areas in our statute, it's required that these project areas demonstrate a public good, public benefit, economic feasibility, and statutory alignment with our statute that was created by the legislature. One more. This is the basic differential model. This is how we capture the tax revenues. When we create a project area, we freeze the existing tax base. And the project areas we've created, in most instances, these are greenfield developments that don't have infrastructure. So the taxable revenue from these properties is very, very low. We freeze that base tax value that continues to flow to the taxing entities. And any increment, we will divide 25-75. So 25% of the increment generated in these developments, that's increment after infrastructure has been put in, after the improvements have been made onto the parcel. We take 25% of that new increment that continues to flow to the taxing entities like normal, and then 75% of that increment will be utilized towards the improvement of that area, be it infrastructure build out. We can sometimes put it towards incentives to eligible companies. Those incentives are post-performance tax rebates. So the company has to come and pay their taxes before they get a rebate back. And we can also use it to pledge dollars towards any bonds that are issued for infrastructure. That's a compelling tool, especially if there's significant infrastructure build out that we need to build up front. We can bond for that infrastructure and use this tax increment. Our statute calls it differential. Everyone else calls it increment. It's the same thing. We can use that to pay back those bonds. Our project areas have a lifespan of 25 years. At the end of that 25 years, with all of those debt payments satisfied, we will terminate the project area and all of that tax increment will flow to the taxing entities. Any questions on that model?
What if it doesn't satisfy the bonds? Do they just keep going until it does?
We can extend the life of the project area up to 40 years. And it would be in the case that there was outstanding debt that needed to be paid.
40 years in total or an additional?
Up to 40 years. Up to 40 years. And so when it comes to bond issuance, most bonds aren't going to be sold if there isn't certainty that they would be paid back. And so we're really careful to ensure that, you know, if we do issue bonds against a growth outcome, that any improvements made will move towards that growth outcome.
So who decides the value of the tax differential?
Taxing it, and the county does
Yeah,
with
so
their tax valuations.
Yeah, the county assesses the property value and levies the property tax. This program captures both the real and the personal property tax. So not just, you know, the real value of the property, but also the taxable value of the personal property within the parcel. So if a large manufacturer comes in that has big expensive equipment, that's personal property that does get taxed, and we can capture that as well.
Doesn't it also include sales tax?
It does also include sales
I
tax.
thought so.
In industrial areas, there's typically not a significant amount of sales tax generated. There are exceptions. Every so often a manufacturer will have an outlet that generates some sales tax. We can create an interlocal agreement in that instance with the city to pass through any sales tax that's generated. Unless the city wants to utilize that sales tax to put towards the infrastructure, that's also something that the city can choose to do. These are great questions.
So on this particular, on Golden Spike project, where is it at in the process?
Oh, that's a great question.
Is that coming up?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Really quickly, this just kind of shows what we're talking about. The blue, if you can see it, in the very, very bottom shows the base property tax that is being collected today on some of these greenfield sites. It's very, very minimal on greenfield developments. And that dark blue shows what the taxing entities will be receiving over the 25 years. And the green shows what we can leverage for infrastructure build out. But at the end of that 25 years, all of that increment will be flowing to the taxing entities. Next slide.
Is that just 1 year?
That's over the 25 years.
Go back. I'm not, are you sure?
I don't know how to go back.
You're saying over the 25 years, we're only talking like $100 and something thousand.
No, this is 100 million.
Oh, I was gonna say, there's no way it's that much.
That's a comma, not a decimal.
Oh, okay, I can't see from here. Okay, all right, I understand now.
We anticipate that we'll be generating in the hundreds of millions in revenues in the Golden Spike project area specifically. And that includes, I'll show you some maps on where those are all allocated. But yeah, it's difficult to estimate how much revenue will be generated, especially because the public data that we have is just on the real property values. We don't have public data on personal property values. So our estimations don't include the personal property values. It's just on the real. So hopefully these are conservative estimates, and we should anticipate additional revenues to come in and hopefully pad some of those assumptions with additional revenues that we can utilize in the future.
So you just use some round number guesstimations on the building sizes, because I guess you technically don't even know what buildings are going to be built, at least on this project out here.
With the developers that we're working with, for their financing purposes, they often will create an absorption schedule. And so, they have to kind of plan out, okay, within the next 10, 15 years, we have this much acreage, we've plotted it out that we're going to be building this many square feet per year. And then they give us those absorption schedules. We compare them with the mill levies that the county has for what those property values could be. We take the average value of, a standard warehouse space, amortize that over time, and that's our basic model for how we make those assumptions.
So it's on future value as well.
Yeah, so we amortize it year over year based on, a standard growth metric. So I think it's like a 2% growth in value year over year. So but again, it's hard to predict what those future values are going to be. But we base it off of, what those facilities are valued at today.
Okay, so let me just restate it, make sure I understand. So I assume the Golden Spike includes the Lakeshore building,
That's correct.
and those are probably close to real numbers because we know what they're building, we know what equipment, personal property they have. The other buildings, you're saying they just put together an absorption schedule of what they're planning to build in what years, and then worked backwards into a guesstimation of what that might look like.
Exactly. So go ahead to the next slide.
So is the developer already, I mean, to the point where they're gonna move forward with this, or?
It depends on the area that we're talking about. We have some areas that are, have a developer ready to go that are actively working on building infrastructure to get developments going. We have some areas that are a little bit further down the road. There isn't a developer in place. A landowner is willing to sell their property. And so, we've kind of got areas that run the gamut. The great thing about our tool is that we can delay the trigger of that 25-year timeline until the property has been improved. That's a really great tool in our statute that we have available. So these project areas, while we have them drawn, we won't be collecting tax increment on them until we trigger them, and we don't have to trigger them until improvements have been made.
And technically, I think you can do it per phase, right?
Yes, we can do it parcel by parcel.
Because that's what I ran into over here was once, I couldn't do the per phase scenario, so it's definitely more valuable.
Mhm.
So you're going to give us an update on the Golden Spike specifically?
Yes. So this is the map of the Golden Spike project area. So we have in blue the existing parcels within our project area. They cover Brigham City, unincorporated Box Elder County, Tremont, and Garland. And this year, Willard City amended about 180 acres into the project area. And so they've identified some acreage right in between the UP main line and I-15 for some development. And so they're going to be participating in the project area as well. Some highlights for this year is we had the Lakeshore Learning ribbon cutting ceremony, really fabulous, really incredible project, not just for this community, but for the state. We had state representatives there as well, celebrating with the communities. It's such a stellar project, and the state is really, really proud of landing that deal. We've been really thrilled with working with them, and excited to see them come in. We also had Nucor Steel announce a new business segment coming into Brigham City. So that'll be adjacent to their existing facilities in Brigham City, a $200 million investment into the community. So we're excited about that announcement.
Is that with the nuclear announcement or totally different?
No, that's different.
Okay.
So Nucor Steel, this business segment, they manufacture the large tower structures for power infrastructure. And so, yeah, the nuclear project is separate.
Okay.
And then, that pending amendment, this is an older slide, has been announced, and we finished that amendment back in September, October. Next slide, please. This just goes into the Lakeshore Learning ribbon cutting ceremony, as well as the Nucor Tower and Structures. That Nucor project will bring about 263 new jobs into the community, which we're excited about. Next slide. A little bit more detail on Nucor. Go ahead and move forward. When it comes to the remainder of the project, we have over 20 recruitment projects that are active today looking at northern Utah. These kind of run the gamut. Some are similar to Lakeshore Learning. Some are similar to Nucor. These are largely coming from the state recruitment activities. Doesn't necessarily include the activities that are happening here locally with, real estate brokerage and things like that. These are just the ones that we're tracking. Any project that comes to the community, obviously the city has that purview on permitting and allowing those companies to come in. With these tools, it really does allow the city to be a little picky about what projects they want to see come into the community. And so we'll work with the city on any relevant recruitment projects that are coming down the pike. We triggered our first parcels. That's the Lakeshore Learning Project for the 2025 tax year. And so we will receive our first tax disbursement this spring in 2026. And that's going to kind of help us understand what those revenues are going to look like year over year now that the county has gone through and made those assessments and gotten those disbursements done. So next year, we'll come back with a full financial report for the city council to talk about what those implications are and how those monies are being spent. Most of that is going to be going back to Lakeshore Learning for the incentive that was negotiated when they arrived. And a good portion of that tax increment will be going towards Factory Street and the upgrades that Garland City bonded for to make those improvements to Factory Street. We anticipate that Lakeshore Learning will expand, and that expansion will largely land on the Tremont side of that development. And so some great things coming down the pike for Tremont as well. I believe there's about 20, not quite 20 acres south of the Lakeshore development that are still available for development. So there may be more projects coming into Tremont on that piece. But the other project that we're looking at, and I'll show it here in a minute, is going to be on the west side of the interstate. We've got some key logistics partnerships we're working on. I mentioned improving rail access in the region is really crucial. We anticipate that a regional solution might make the most sense for Box Elder County. That might look like a transload facility. It really depends on the demand for rail here, but something that we're talking to our logistics partners about. Moving on to the next slide.
What's a transload facility?
A transload facility, that's a great question. That is where you have a rail car come into the transload facility and they take whatever is in the rail car out of the rail car or off of the rail car. Some transload facilities specialize in specific commodities. You know, sometimes they have pumps that can pump, you know, liquids out of tanks. Sometimes it's just forklifts removing items off of flat rail cars. It really depends on what commodities need to be transloaded, but that's essentially what it is. It's whatever's on the rail car, you take it off, you move it onto a truck, and then the truck can take it the last mile.
There's one in Salt Lake, right?
Yes. So
Cedar City?
yes. Cedar City just expanded a new transload facility. And then it's a little bit different from an intermodal hub. An intermodal hub is where you take a container off of a train and you put the entire container onto a truck. There's an intermodal hub in Pocatello, so fairly close to where we're at here. But I think a transload facility, what that really allows for is it allows multiple users to have access to rail, even if they don't have it in their backyard, even if they don't have it serving their plot directly. That last mile can make a big difference in cost savings for them to use rail instead of trucks. We're going to continue to market the community and the project area where we have it. We have an annual amendment cycle for the project area. So if there are additional areas that would like to be included, Willard as an example, we do that annually. We've also set aside 3% of the tax differential to go towards wetlands preservations. We'll work with qualifying projects on dispersing that 3%. But again, those funds will stay here local and regional to help benefit the crucial wetlands in the area. Next slide. So these kind of show the areas that we're located. This is our Brigham City parcels. Next slide. This is where we're located here. We have the Lakeshore Learning piece that spans the border of Garland and Tremonton. And then we have the Harwood zone that's on the west side of 84. That is currently an unincorporated county. And that entire area is a single landowner. And the county, in partnership with the city, opted to include that in the project area boundaries. In order to get services to that area, it's already in Tremonton's annexation plan. The landowner will have to petition for annexation, come into Tremonton to receive those services, and the city can leverage the tax increment tool to build the infrastructure that is needed to support any development that happens out there. Ultimately, the city will decide how that area gets zoned and what types of growth they want to see out in that area. And as you know, that planning process is a public process.
And Jeff, you've been working on revising all of the ordinances that might impact that. I think we tabled that, didn't we?
We did, and it's, I'm gonna be sharing that with the DRC and then with the Planning Commission soon, because we just got the first version with all of those changes that you had suggested we incorporate back because the holidays and stalled it out a little bit. So I'm excited to bring it back to the Planning Commission, but it's been a few months to get those changes in.
What other questions can I answer for the Planning Commission?
Is you're done with your presentation then?
Yeah, I have some more maps. If you go to the next slide, we have the zones in unincorporated county. This is near the Procter & Gamble site. And if you go to the next slide, this is the map of the new area that Willard included. And as I mentioned, it's right in between that UP rail line on the east and I-15 on the west. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
You guys make me do all the talking.
Let's just, you know, the questions to ask, okay? None of the rest of us know.
I just want to know, I guess, where I'm trying to understand the process of the vision. So right now, the landowner still owns it. It has not been annexed into the city because we haven't seen it yet. But a potential developer is or isn't looking at it.
My understanding is that there have been developers courting the landowner, but as far as I know, no transaction has occurred.
We had talked about previously that we would need to like put some ground rules of like what we would want this to have. Would we need to do that before the developer?
So hopefully there's gonna be two large items that get done before this triggers. And one is that we will get through the zoning changes so that if it was triggered, we could at least have a discussion with the zoning code we feel comfortable with. But two is updating the land use plan and going through that process with the public to understand better what they would find acceptable and getting their input, because my hope is that if we can get some public support and the land use plan is created, that we'll feel comfortable sharing that with Stephanie, and that'll be a great tool for her to go out and use as she's recruiting companies, because with the zoning change, with the zoning updates and the land use plan updates, that hopefully will give her two great things to go out and start marketing that area with more. Due to the constraints with utilities in that area, I think that's likely what is keeping progress away, because it's just it's hard to know right now what, especially when you're talking industrial, of what to do with the wastewater and how much water. And so it's hard to even have a guesstimated conversation at it's Stephanie's level of what the city would be expecting, because our first answer is, well, what are you going to be producing? What are you needing? And they're like, well, it depends. What can you give us? And it's this chicken versus egg, but and it's a conversation that's just kind of a one step at a time on the city end. So I know our public works director and our city engineer are working hard to come up with some answers for that. But frankly, the south part of I-84 is not an area that, sorry, I was trying to stifle a yawn, but it kept fighting its way through.
We know you're emotional about it.
Very choked up. It's an area that has never had a lot of planning effort put into it, and this honestly will be the genesis of Tremont City planning for that area, because I think once the infrastructure goes out, it will grow rather quickly. But it'll come down to, using the inland port, using other financial tools. What can we muster to make it make sense in the long run for Tremont City? So it's one of a few very simple, straightforward planning questions we're trying to tackle right now. I mean, so
if I'm understanding correctly as well, it's not kind of off topic, but it's the increments that you are projecting, like in the 25 to 70 and 75. What do you call it? What do you call them? Differential is the wording that we're using. That differential is based on the future values, and as they go, like as the, and that's after you're triggered, right? After you trigger the, tax
Completion of the build.
Yeah. Then it's that you send someone out yearly to assess that value, or is that just at the county level?
Yeah.
It's just every year?
It's the same, they're being taxed at the same value that they're being taxed right now. It really doesn't impact the landowners. The landowners are going to continue to pay their taxes as they need to pay. The county goes, assesses the value of each of those parcels. The project area just tells them where to disperse it, right? So after they collect that taxes, that 75% gets set aside for the project area, and the 25% gets dispersed to the remaining taxing entities for that 25-year period.
And that's just of the increase.
And that's just of the increase. The county and the taxing entities will continue to get the existing tax base that's there today.
At plus 25%.
Yes. Well, of the increase.
Yeah.
But it also does include personal property and the sales tax.
So what would happen to the debt if, say, there was a company that we allowed in, they survived 10 years, and then something happened with AI, and then all of a sudden they went bankrupt? Where would the debt go?
That's a great question. When we issue debt, we leverage a mechanism known as a public infrastructure district. A public infrastructure district is a semi-public entity, and it's a mechanism created by the state to help protect the community from that liability that you're describing. And so if a public infrastructure entity, if they issue those bonds, they're the entity responsible for those bonds. It wouldn't be the city. And so that helps protect the city from that liability. It's a really handy tool. And then the city and the inland port in that instance would commit that increment, that differential, to pay back those bonds. So we would do a tax sharing agreement with that entity to pay back those bonds.
And say another company bought that building, they would be subject to paying off this stuff themselves as well.
It's just like you can't really bankrupt out of taxes.
Right.
Because the taxes are a first lien position, so that's what this would be, is essentially a tax. And so it's gonna be paid by somebody, whether it's the lender who foreclosed on them, or the company that bought them, or somebody's gonna
And if
pay.
nobody ever buys it, then they assume.
Well, what they'll do is extend the project area up to 40 years and pay it out that way, but somebody's gonna buy it because the bank wouldn't foreclose on them if it had no value.
True.
You know, so the bank normally would pay the tax debt to, you know what I mean, like
Correct.
lose your home, I mean, the bank's gonna pay the taxes so that they don't get foreclosed on. But yeah,
Have you seen it happen?
I do know of a PID that has recently gone bankrupt. I think there was a lot of, it wasn't in a project area. It wasn't, I think it was a residential development that went belly up. And I know that the state auditor has concerns about the mechanism. When it comes to tax differential backed bonds, we're issuing the very, very first ones ever in the last couple of years. So we haven't seen an instance where, you know, that debt hasn't been paid or has defaulted. It certainly can happen. And for these communities that are issuing that debt, that are moving forward with these developments, they feel like it's a risk they're willing to take in order to bring that new tax revenue, in order to bring those jobs and that industry to come in their communities. So, you know, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what's gonna happen. That being said, diversifying your revenue base is always a good idea for communities. You know, residential is really hard on revenues. It's very costly to bring in residential, and it really doesn't pay for itself. So bringing in industry really helps subsidize those services that you need to bring to your citizens. And so that's really what we're trying to do is economic development is for that purpose, to diversify the tax revenues available. And in some instances, especially with instances where there's zero infrastructure, this is just a way to kickstart that development and bring in that area that would have a hard time developing otherwise.
what percentage of the differential can be used towards city, you know, like the water tank or other services that are going to serve the project? I assume they can use some component of that for deficient stuff in the city?
So when we assess the infrastructure that needs to go in, there's qualifying infrastructure and then there's non-qualifying infrastructure. The qualifying infrastructure would be regional infrastructure, and it would be infrastructure that would, in most instances, be publicly owned. So if we build a water line, and if we build a water storage tank to service that line, and you know, if we build a new water sewer treatment plant, that's going to be maintained and owned by the city. You know, the PID in most instances will use a PID. The PID will finance the construction of that infrastructure and turn that over to the city. So it'll be a public asset at that point. That's how it would work is, you know, we're going to be building public infrastructure that the utilities are going to be owning and maintaining in perpetuity. Our statute does allow us to do the same thing with power infrastructure and natural gas infrastructure. And it would be the similar mechanism where, you know, the PID would pay to build that infrastructure and then turn it over to the utility to own and maintain it. So a water tank that's going to service the area, even if it's not inside of that boundary, that would still be a qualifying expense. And it was similar with Factory Street. You know, a lot of those improvements on Factory Street weren't inside those boundaries, but they were serving the project area, so it's a qualifying expense.
Are you asking how much of the monies collected can be used for it?
I just wondered if there was a specific percentage that was allocated towards, but I guess it's just calculated on a case-by-case basis, I guess.
And you know, if the city, you know, for example, we can utilize it for infrastructure, for incentives. Garland opted to put the bulk of that towards incentives. If Tremont City decided, hey, we don't care about incentives, we just want all of that to go to infrastructure, that works too.
Incentive like a large recreation facility?
No, an
Like,
incentive.
Going back to Lakeshore, right?
Yeah,
Because,
it goes back to Lakeshore.
All 75% or just? some?
I think it was a 60% incentive
So of the,
of the
of
center.
that or differential, it's actually going back to Lakeshore to do the updates on factory, is that correct?
So Lakeshore gets their incentive, that's 60%, and then the remainder that of Garland's portion will go towards Factory Street. So whatever is
Lakeshore,
left
they just do
over-
whatever they want with that 60, that was these, so they got a tax cut.
It's a post-performance tax rebate. So they pay their taxes, and then assuming, they paid it in full, they'll get a percentage of their property taxes back.
Just to get them there.
But is there a percentage that we can offer back to the public for the opportunity to deal with the massive building?
Well, wouldn't that be part of our sales tax? It would be that 25%
Yeah.
increase,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
So then that 25% increase that we're getting over that 25 years.
Well,
Right, but we're saying,
Yeah, but-
Yeah.
can we get more than the 25?
Well, I'm just saying, have you seen other areas where they've said, okay, yeah, we'll build you a new fire station, or we'll build you a new city office or a large recreation facility? And, have that be funded as part of the 75% differential rather than just the tax increase, does that make sense?
Per our statute, anything that we collect will need to have a nexus to the project area. It's pretty vague language, and so I think there is a case to be made
Salt Lake
that,
Nexus or a Tremont Nexus?
we can't take anything.
Because, no, I'm saying a Nexus in Salt Lake might look like half a block, but in Tremont, it could look like
All of 3 lots.
everything.
Well, I think a good example is with the Lakeshore development. In those negotiations, Tremont negotiated to have an active transportation trail that was going to be connected to the Lakeshore Learning Development, be funded by this increment. And so, active transportation, it's a bike trail, but it had a nexus to the project area. So it was a qualifying expense. There's ways we can get creative, especially with something like public safety. That's something we did in Salt Lake. We just sent $2 million to the Salt Lake PD for law enforcement from that differential. And then they'll have, I think they'll have about 2 million ongoing year over year going towards their public safety. So there's ways we can get creative with it. We just got to make sure that any debt service gets covered first. Any obligations, in the instance of Lakeshore get paid through, and then we can get creative with the remainder.
So Lakeshore would have one deal with Garland and one deal with us potentially if later they build onto the.
Yeah, the Lakeshore intends to, if they move forward with an expansion, it will be into Tremont. And so that's going to be additional increment that Tremont is going to see coming through. And, once that comes, that'll be revenue we need to earmark to the benefit of that development, to the benefit of the city.
And at this point, we don't have to agree to 60% that Garland did. Cool.
Well, and I guess technically it's still part of the same project because they're just doing another phase, and the new phase starts over the 25 years at each new building of the phase. Does that make sense? That's the hardest part about some of the other RDAs and the CDAs that we've done is doesn't have that mechanism. Like once it starts, then it starts the 25 years ticking, but they've done it on a per phase basis.
So if they come back with an expansion, they'll have to renegotiate that incentive.
That phase.
And since it will largely land on Tremont, it'll be Tremont's discretion to determine what that incentive needs to be. 60% over 25 years is a really valuable incentive. And, you know, if it's a competitive project, you know, if they come and say, well, if you don't offer us an incentive, then we'll take this expansion and we'll take it to a different plant, something for the city to consider, but it'll be up to the city to determine, you know, and negotiate with Lakeshore at that point. We're just the mechanism. We're just the tool. These are great questions.
Thank you. You're good.
I'm sure there's more somewhere.
And feel free to shoot me an email if anything else comes up, if you have other questions about what's going on. You know, we're a public entity too, and so happy to help clarify any questions or any doubts. We'll continue to work with staff on that Harwood zone. You know, once that annexation occurs, once that planning exercise has happened, and we'll be ready to get going.
It's important that you know in your project and for the future that we do have an obesity problem here in the city, and all of the employees working are going to definitely have a nexus with a large recreation facility. Okay, I make a motion.
Wait, recreation facilities are an amenity for employers.
There's a definite nexus there.
It's an amenity for employers. But
Okay.
but let's talk about it.
Okay, I like it.
Interesting.
Let's make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have any comments and reports?
I did want to say something that was kind of here nor there, and you know, it might involve Tremont classifieds, so that's qualifying. So somebody was saying that the jobs over at Lakeshore have been less than stellar as far as how difficult it is to work for Lakeshore. And that their turnover has been fairly high and they don't pay very well. And I fully understand that this doesn't necessarily happen at this level. I just wish that we could attract something that gives a little bit higher paying, not maybe the lowest paying, difficult jobs that people don't really want to do. And I don't know how to make that happen here, but if we could brainstorm anything, I think it would be worth, I mean, if my kids don't want to work there and they really like money, then we need to
The
think of.
hard part is that we are a middle community.
I understand that, but I also think we have highly intelligent people as well, and somehow we don't have a way to prove that. And I feel like that's that missing component of like telling a company, come here, we do have people that are capable and intelligent, and we don't have to stick to one level of jobs. We can have something that's a little bit transitional. And I fully understand that doesn't even mean you need a college degree. I just feel like it would be nice to have something that required a little bit more of a professional grade pay.
There is something known as market rate of pay, and depending on the region, the pay is structured kind of what the market will bear. And so it is kind of challenging, but just coming from, I used to work at Post, and I was the first general manager of Millard Refrigerated, which is now Lineage Logistics. And one of the big challenges we had was convincing our home office that we needed to have higher pay, because they would look at the market rate of pay for the area and say, that's enough. So it's challenging.
Now you can't buy a house, you know?
Well, that's not because the jobs aren't there, it's because the
Houses.
economy's gone crazy on real estate, so.
Well, and you have a diversity of employers here, and they are competing for labor, right? You know, you've got Nucor with their billboards, you know, saying that they're doing $90K a year. If, you know, I was making less than that at Post or at Lakeshore, you know, where am I gonna send my resume? So I think it's, you know, these companies, and Lakeshore is no exception, like they are going to have to compete for that labor if they're going to curtail that turnover. And similarly, when it comes to, you know, the state has an incentive program as well that's totally based off of job creation. And in order for Lakeshore to qualify for that, they have to meet a minimum wage requirement. And any jobs that are below that wage requirement don't get incentivized. They won't get paid out for. So we try to encourage that increase of pay. And I think it's something we can look at as a city. If a company comes and wants an incentive, we can say, okay, well, show us your wages. And if your wages are decent, then we'll consider offering an incentive. If they're just going to be bare minimum, then, you know, we don't have to incentivize you. So it's just another mechanism that the city has to encourage the kind of growth that you want to see and encourage the type of corporate citizens that are going to make a difference.
That actually is a helpful piece of information, that we have the power at that point.
And I think too, like with Lakeshore, we've realized they've only been open for what, a year, not even?
Yeah.
And so they are still learning culture and the management of.
Right, and what
You know,
people say on Tremont Classifieds is like, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying if there was anything.
What are you saying?
What? Yeah, I know. I'm questioning the integrity.
Well, but even if you look at Northrop Grumman and ATK and like whatever it's been all these years, I mean, it's probably had the highest turnover of any facility around here, and they're the highest paying, probably engineer style jobs I think you're addressing. So even those jobs are high turnover even at that stage. I mean, my whole life it's been they lay off 5,000 people and then hire 3,000 people, you know?
Right.
So I think all of them are somewhat volatile depending on what the market drives.
Right.
But, you know.
Yeah.
But these kind of economic development tools allow the city to be proactive about your growth rather than reactive, right? You know, you have a pretty big carrot that you can dangle in front of the companies you do want, and you don't have to offer it for any businesses. I mean, you know, if they meet the code, if they come in and they fit the zoning, you know, there's not a lot you can do to stop them from, you know, buying a piece of property and you know, building a facility, hiring people. That being said, you can keep that incentive for the companies that you really, really want to incentivize.
Well, and that's what comes back to Jeff's conversation, is we're trying to modify zoning to make sure that the code is going to fit, that if somebody shows up, they can do what they want within the code. And we kind of have already thought through what we want to allow and what we're going to do with the water system and all of the infrastructure issues we've already addressed. But in my mind, if you look at it, I mean, in order to get that kind of growth right now, the city or someone would have to pay to extend all those utilities on the other side of the freeway, which essentially we're going to have to pay for 100%, where if you do, you know, the PID, let them pay for it, let the tax increment of the development they're going to do pay for it, plus the 25%. I mean, it's an absolute no-brainer if we can just get something that we feel good about and make sure it addresses the needs. But,
Yeah, that planning exercise needs to happen first.
Mhm.
And that kind of gives us on the state level direction as to what could actually fit. Because, you know, you have a great workforce, you have the nexus of I-84 and I-15 right here. And there's a lot of reasons why this is an incredible place to do business. And so you're gonna get a lot of looks. You know, you're gonna be a very attractive community for industrial development. I mean, you've got everything you need to make that happen. And so this planning exercise is important to make sure that, you know, you can be prescriptive up front about exactly what type of development you want to be there, of what kinds of uses you want to be there. You know, now's the time for you to say, to limit, you know, anything if you don't want emissions, if you don't want, you know, you can kind of decide what you don't want to be there and build that into your code. And that's a great way to enforce it.
And we should address employee health.
With a recreational facility? Wow, cool.
I think what I like the most about it is, you know, earmarking specifically to the area. Like, I feel like when it comes to cities and budgets and allocation spending from an entity, those tax increments that come in, they can get distracted very quickly. But to have the focus of, look, you've only got, this area is the only area that you can utilize those funds in for improvement. It makes it really powerful to drive revenues and updates and infrastructure help as a citywide, city thinking to that spot. So
Well, and it's
that's good.
it's not, you're not taking from your general fund, right, to build that infrastructure that needs to be built, right? And so that keeps it from your residents having to pay for that growth. The development, the end users that are going to be utilizing that plot of land, that is the revenue that you're going to be using, right? Those are going to be the taxpayers that build their community, build their development.
Yeah.
And then, the residents that are paying their taxes, that's going into your general fund, that's going into the services that they need.
Well, and then we can compete, because Idaho's been slaughtering us, companies going to Idaho because they get better incentives up there, so we can compete. And we're gonna see some of it, but our kids will be the ones that get the full freight of the tax revenue in 25 years or whenever the PID is paid off. And that's why we're doing this, to build the project, ultimately subsidizing cost of the taxes so that they can afford to live better than we're doing it right now with the tax burden that we have. But maybe you should introduce Christy. Isn't this your first official meeting here at the Planning Commission?
It is.
We should introduce her.
Hey, thank you. This is Christy's first meeting, everyone.
Well,
Christy,
First meeting sitting here, not my first meeting
Correct.
planned.
Would you like to share any thoughts or introduce yourself?
There's one thing I've learned through my webinars with the state that I've taken. We don't have to follow the status quo. We don't have to, if it's okay to have an opinion, and I encourage you to stick to your opinions. Don't just cave in because someone says, this is the best we can do. Research, check things out. But when we have a democracy, we don't all get along all the time, and that's okay. When you have a dictatorship, one person makes the decisions. So I encourage you to think outside the box. Do your own thinking and not just go with status quo. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
I will second Micah's motion.
That was out of order. That was
Sorry, I'll redo it.
out of order. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
It's been moved and seconded. Adjourn. All in favor? Say yes.
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 Oh, I had a report. Just kidding.
Next time.
Did you really want to do it?